welcome workshop Hacking Biometric Systems. Just let me tell you why we're doing this workshop. So what do we want to achieve with it? First, we want to report our findings to an interesting audience, that would be you. And the goal is to have you go home and so you can start hacking biometric systems on your own right away. And then, in the second part of the workshop, we want to let you find out for yourself how hard it is to hack biometric systems. It's not very hard, so we just want to play around with it. I'll give you a short overview of what you will hear in the next 45 minutes. Part 1 will be a foundation. We'll give you some basic information about how biometric systems work anyway. This includes the listed systems, fingerprint recognition, face recognition, speaker recognition, handwriting, and recognition of keystroke dynamics, all of which we have brought along. Part 2 will be basic information about attacks in general and classification of attacks. Part 3 will be specific attacks which we have carried out. Part 2 will serve to have a bit of systematics. And in part 4 we want to have you hack biometric systems on your own, on systems we have worked on. Let's have a competition. The basic functionality of any biometric system, just very brief, is you have to enroll in the user, so take a sample, process it if necessary, and store it for later use. That's the reference template. And in the authentication process, you accommodate a sample of a biometric attribute. You pre-process it if necessary and match it to the reference template. And after this calculation process, you give a probabilistic answer whether the reference template matches the sample. And the answer is always probabilistic because we can never match exactly. We can also only say it's 90% chance that that was the same user.
Okay, face recognition. How does it functionize? First, you have to get the picture. That mostly means you have a webcam and it makes that a picture. It had to be digitalized, and then first you search the face in this picture. There's an algorithm that normally looks at the position of the eyes or the mouth, and if there is a face, the next step will come. It's normalization. That's to find out different distances from the face to the camera. If the face is normalized, then the feature extraction begins. There are different possibilities to extract features. First one is the eigenface method. Eigenface is we have a database of nearly 100 basic faces, and if you combine that linearly, the face is the user could be recognized. So, second one is template matching. Template matching means you compare single particular segments from the whole picture, normally color analysis, and then you compare this single part from the original picture to the template. Third one is elastic graph matching. Here, flexible grid overlays the face, where the crossing points represent the all things represent spiking points. So maybe slow movements of the head could be, the person could be identified instead of moving the head. Some of these face recognition systems also use a leg check. There are three different possibilities to do that. First is moving of the whole head. The second is moving of the in the face, like blinking also. And the third one is to measure the reflective properties of the skin. Next one is keystroke dynamics. Keystroke dynamics is not often used, but it's a way to put it in the background. So if unauthorized user takes the keyboard is not locked and he types a little bit and then somewhere in the system tells you everyone is the correct user. Keystroke dynamics normalize consists of typing the typing rhythm and the time to press key relation. And overtakes means if you hold down one key and pressing another before lifting the first one. The use of the shift key indicates if you are, or might be indicates if you are left-handed or right-hander. And if you get a special keyboard, you can measure the typing pressure. Speaker verification. Speaker verification, there are two different possibilities to identify speakers. First is a written text, also a passphrase for the computer says to please say this word, or a free speech verification, so you simply speak and the computer got enough words he get you info. Functionality is simply to record the samples, digitalize it, filter the noise if there are somewhere, and extracting the characteristic features like tone pitch or the dynamic of the voice.
Somehow my fingerprint point is missing. I don't know where it went, but I just have to tell you without a fault. Fingerprint is of course also important. It's the most and best known system, and it works by accommodating a finger image, and then you can either extract features like minutiae from the image. Minutiae are small points on your finger images where ridges end or bifurcate, and store them and match them, or you can have a pattern-based matching approach where you use, for example, neural networks or other pattern matching techniques. But the minutiae approach is the most common, at least primarily. Okay. And then we have another signature handwriting recognition, which is going to be referred by Biometric as the inventor of the handwriting recognition system.
Okay. Yeah, guten Tag. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. And I'm a member of HAZY. Is a handwriting recognition system. I say, please note it's special handwriting, no signature. Because there's a little difference. It's also interesting different for hackers. Because the signature are all time nearby is the same. But when you write Berlin, New York, California, or Australia, nobody knows what have you write. What is your handwriting or handwritten password? So you can try to hack me, but you know maybe my signature, but you don't know my password. So you can hack it. And also when there is a factory, maybe with 1,000 people who has lazy, and each evening the computer says, please write now Chaos Computer Club. So each people has to write Chaos Computer Club on this writing area. So you go in, you hack it, and you say, oh, very nice, Chaos Computer Club is a password, but they have thousands different passwords. Each people write the same name, the same word, but you have to know now who is it from this thousand. You can't find it. And also interesting is it is a, I must read it, my English is not the best. At the same time a pin pad for conventional and dynamic pin, because there are some people who say we check the keystroke dynamic. It is not right, keystroke dynamic. It is better to say keystroke behavior, because only with HESI you can take the dynamic, because the pressure and the time and the difference of the pressure when you put in a pin. And so nobody can fake it, because you can look it by a camera, of course, by a webcam or what you want, and you see, oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is this pin number, but you don't know how I put in the pin number in this text. The software is only making for recognize the signature, not for recognize the pin, but it goes. You can later, who like it, can look it. You can put in, and so you can try to create my pin number. I beg you for one. I am inventor. I am not a system specialist. So here, of course, I know it. You can go here in, and you can maybe go here inside the electronic and take out some information for you. But I beg you only to check to fake my signature or my password or my PIN, because I'm not this specialist, and I know we must put in maybe for some special problems, you know, put in a crypto chip and something. Thank you.
Later have the opportunity to try that yourself. Let's come to the general attacks. All the basic information to enable you to understand real attacks and come up with real attacks yourself. So you can classify attacks. Different attacks require different knowledge conditions, like amount of money. You know this from cryptanalysis, where you can have attacks which require 4 terabytes of encrypted text. This is not a very strong attack because you rarely have the opportunity to get 4 terabytes of ciphertext. And also in biometric system, there are different strength of attacks, and the strongest attacks are always the ones which are the most general ones and require the least demanding conditions, which means there can be anybody around watching you and checking what you're doing, and you're still able to hack it. You need the least money and the least knowledge. These are the strongest attacks. And the strongest attacks are the most valuable ones. You always look for strong attacks if you can. An overview of the possible attacks: you can attack the software and the hardware. In the hardware you have the sensors, you sort of use the sensor and attack the system with the sensor. You can attack the algorithms inside. I'll come to the later. We'll all have that explained later. You can attack the reference data and the communication link. The communication link is a bit of both, because you wiretap the communication perhaps, and then you use the data to manipulate and to replay attacks and whatever. So if you attack the reference data, you can have different possibilities. You can substitute the original template with your own one. Then you log off the original user and you will be recognized, which is not very good because it will be noticed very soon. You can also manipulate the original template such that it contains features, the original features and your own features. So both the original user and you will be still recognized by the system, which is better because they won't notice. If a user comes and says, oh, I'm not recognized, then they will soon notice that the template was modified. We can use a page attribute during enrolling, but it's not that interesting because it's very limited. And you can make an adaptive system gradually adopt to a feature set of your choice. And adaptive systems always relearn during the recognition process. They always adopt slight changes in the features. And when you attack the sensor, you mostly create dummy, which is very straightforward, and illustrate about the scene feature where you have fingerprint image templates to fake finger. If you attack the communication, you can either wiretap the link or eavesdrop electromagnetic signals on the link, which would have been immediate set, which we shouldn't make because it's not a systems engineer. And you can replay the tap data through a classic replay attack, and you can analyze the tap data, which is very useful, comes later, and you can also use the tap data to create dummies. So, data analysis is sometimes overlooked, but especially interesting. You analyze reference data or capture data, and it can help you by, you can make dummies from it. You can say something about privacy issues in the system, which is also sometimes interesting from a privacy standpoint. And the data can be evidence about how the algorithm works, which is also sometimes work looking at. And the data is also probably required to carry out replay attacks. So if you have wiretap data from the communication link, you can analyze it to try to find out whether it is encrypted, whether there is some kind of timestamp which you would have to modify. You can try to find out the format of the data and modify it slightly so that there will some mechanism to recognize replay attacks will be overcome if you slightly modify it. And I have an example for that. I shortly read it out to you. This is data from the Siemens IDMOS reference template, which is stored on the disk, readable to anybody. And if you do a simple, really simple analyzation, you interpret the data as a bitmap and assign each byte the color according to its value, and then you get a grayscale image as shown beneath, which is clearly a fingerprint and some kind of unclear, we'll come to the later, and some kind of noise up on the top. And you can see from this image that there's probably a privacy problem because there is a fingerprint image stored on the disk, readable to anybody. You can think of worms to travel the internet looking for fingerprint images and collecting them. And it's an excellent sample for a dummy. This is a sample which obviously passed the recognition process. And you can say that the algorithm probably uses something else than Unishare-based recognition, because if they only use Unishare-based recognition, they wouldn't need the images in the template. So you can say that probably they'll use something else like pattern-based matching. And this is important if you try to do some certain attacks which rely on the fact that there is only Unishare-based recognition. And text and algorithms are also often overlooked and especially interesting. Option 1 is to analyze algorithms for flaws, which can support other attacks, or for getting an idea for how and which direction to go. And option 2 is to exploit flaws in the algorithms themselves. Examples are Unishare block or latent print reactivation. Unishare platform is an attack where you send the template where every Unishare exists, every possible XY coordinate has a Unishare. And so the algorithm will probably match the template because there are hundreds and thousands of Unishare and they will match just by chance. The problem is that most algorithms are undisclosed and it's unlikely that they will change. So so you can only understand the behavior of the system. And if the synthetic approach is also interesting, you try to come up with algorithms yourself, so you might get ideas of how other algorithms might work. This is how I got the idea for the minutia plot attack. But brief specific attacks will be driven by.
Okay, the first one is the fingerprint recognition. Special attacks simply the same way here. First, you have to visualize the fingerprint that the bottle or the CD or something. Here you can use graphite or soot, like the police hospital, or very good for the contrast for the later digitalization is the first fluorescing pigment, or needed reed spray. Needed reed spray is a spray that makes a chemical reaction with the fat of the fingerprint. Or maybe if you got connection to an existing database, like from the police, you could use this thing on fingerprint. Second is you have to digitalize it, and then you have to make a master. Here you can expose and etch photosensitive printed circuit boards, or you use the photocopy of the fingerprint. What you have to get is a 3D structure of this fingerprint, where you can put the dummy material to get the dummy. And both of this will provide such a structure. To make the dummy, you can put liquid latex or gelatin to the spoil of the board. With liquid latex, you have to dry it out, and then you can use it as a dummy to take the fingerprint sensor. Or another possibility is to use a graphite fixed on the adhesive tape, which you have if you collect this fingerprint from the bottom. Other possibilities are capacitor array, which directly manipulates the sensor. It means you put a capacitor array upside down to the sensor, and you directly manipulate the capacitance of the sensor array. The dummy was all possible limity, like these are always there. Face recognition. The text here is you could take a photo and simply hold it in front of the camera. That often will have the effect to hack the system. If there are any live check, like the movement of the head or something like that, then a single picture won't help, so you have to play a slideshow or a video which you can have on the monitor and just hold it in front of the camera and play. Maybe you can make up your face like to look like the person you want to imitate, or a latex mask, or maybe a fully dummy head. Speaker verification. I think the easiest one, the easiest possibility is to just record the authentication process and play it again. Two very hard possibilities are to make a text-to-speech system with the voice of a known user, or to collect a word database. That means to have a speech of a user and simply put out some words of this, and then if the system tells you to speak your passphrase, to speak the passphrase is put on the screen, then you simply say types the words and your system speak it out. Takes on keystroke dynamic. Here you first have to get the data that you can do with observing the person stroking the keys by a camera or a special keylogger that don't have to lock the keys and the time of the time space the key is pressed, or an electromagnetic radiation as a eavesdropping. To take the system, you have learned to retype it, or use a special keyboard which you type with your own keystroke dynamic, and the system converted it to the keystroke dynamic you get before from the user.
If there are any Windows tools still dynamic want to try to write such a special keylogger which does not only record the keys but also the time between the keys and possible overlappings.
Software or hardware? Okay, handwriting recognition. It's the same way like keystroke recognition. First you have to observe the user logging in, and the dynamic you could observe with a camera. The pressure maybe you could get by the offline signature or offline writings from the author. Or you have a simple pressure sensitive foil, you underline the paper and take the pressure and the time coordinates from the handwriter. To say it's like keystroke recognition, learn to rewrite it, or maybe a signature automat can do it too.
There's an interesting bit about learn to read writing. If you imagine that banks and also other businesses adopt to the technique to use electronic signature or handwriting recognition instead of normal signature verification, you could imagine that there are a lot of templates lying around which you could use to build some kind of software which trains you on a template. So you put in the template which you have stolen somewhere, and then the software tells you no, there you have to do some more pressure, and then over there you have to do a bow, and this is possible later of this handwriting recognition process. So we have future work which we want to do later on is external systems, especially high security systems, because up to now we've only had desktop systems which have simple reasons that companies don't want to give up their high security systems. I don't know for what reason. Maybe they're too expensive or too insecure, I don't know. Improve existing attacks. So maybe we develop attacks which can be carried out outside of the laboratory. The scenario would be to have a real application somewhere, for example, in the shop in Offenburg, where you can pay your hardware with fingerprint. You go there, you take a fingerprint and try to really carry out the computer out of the store, which you have paid with a fingerprint. That would be a real application and real interesting, because up to now there have only been laboratory attacks. And then we will further explore possible blocking algorithms, which has not been done up to now very extensively. Are there any questions?
The microphone is here.
I could imagine that learning to retype this keystroke recognition technique takes quite a lot of time because you have to adapt all of your typing techniques. Is it really? I think there would mostly be an easier way to hack the system than by playing around with all of the typing style, isn't that?
Yeah, I think so too. It's really time expensive process, but we just want to list it for reasons of completeness. And I also covered the hack where you have some kind of special keyboard which translates your dynamics to the design dynamics, because you can also reprogram it, and it's always terrible. You can reprogram it to the users.
Why do you speak about AIDS identification system? Iris identification system?
Iris. What's about Iris? We didn't refer here and because we didn't really know it was not possible to get such a system. We tried to get one from Panasonic, but they didn't want to give us because they said they were sued after this article in the CT and they are really careful now. But we would have liked to bring it along, but it's not possible.
Works the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, the algorithms are different, but you can also overcome it with simple program. But I think Iris recognition could be cool. I mean, it could be really good, and I don't know why they do it like this.
What do you mean it could be really cool?
I mean, it could be really some kind of secure in the sense, that would be better than passwords and passwords and rules.
Would it be better than fingerprint recognition?
Yeah, it would be better than fingerprint recognition. Because I think it's harder to fake if you do really good. And I think but if you want to do really good, it's also expensive. That's why we don't so do it. What is the best system?
Not storing data.
Best system, that's a really strange question, because it depends on what you want to do. If you just want to give it to your chef, to your boss, who doesn't really can remember his password, and there's likely always runs on the keyboard, then fingerprint recognition on the desktop market is really cool, because it's in any way better than writing the password under the keyboard. But if you want to have something to secure some high security area, I don't know any system which is really, really good. What is really good is to combine biometric with systems we use tokens and passwords and biometric. This could be really okay, but only biometric is problematic.
Combining two biometric systems.
Also, please don't forget one. When you go to buy a newspaper, you need the signature. You have maybe a chip card with a fingerprint to put in the automatic app, the Bildzeitung, and okay. And nobody likes or want to fake you for 50 cents for $1. Why? So, but when you go up and you have 5,000 of $10,000, so that is nobody. That is the signature.
Well, I think that only, in the moment, there's only one variable system, it's DNA analysis. It would be very hard to get it well copied or something like that. You can...
You also there. I get you on the Dinge now.
I also got the DNA so if you go away, just take some there. There's a really good DNA sample. I mean, nothing is easier than getting a DNA sample somewhere. maybe you combine it with some other biometric system or some kind of life check, and I don't know, but nothing is easier than collecting a DNA sample.
Well, it's very easy to collect a DNA sample, but, well, if you cut a hair from me and then get a test, well, it's my hair, it's not another one.
I think we're talking about authentication here, not about identification, maybe which will be used perhaps in the field of criminal investigation. We're talking about authentication, and I don't know how you want to do DNA-based authentication security. You can have the users like in Getica and let them give some blood tests to you. I don't think that's acceptable. And even doing that, you also see the Getica, right? It's what we take too. And get some blood under the skin from somebody else. I don't think DNA-based authentication is that good for authentication. Maybe it's good for identification, but that's not good to avoid. I don't know whether you've heard of the case where they got a murderer and identified him clearly by his DNA. The only problem was he was in prison by the time, and there was almost no chance that he could get out without anybody noticing. So I think they was getting a big problem there. It's not clear whether DNA is that unique and useful the techniques used today. Right?
Okay, I got a question for you. The guy talking about the link system. It's both your signature and the pressure on the pad.
I will show you.
Okay,
I have,
because that's what I'm interested in.
I have a question concerning the retina scan or any biometric scan. If someone steals my key from the database, say for my retina scan, somebody steals that, you agree I only have one other password I can choose. So let's add that. That's why I don't see why biometric systems are pushed that much, because I am so limited in how many passwords I can possibly use.
That's a problem. But there are also approaches to combining the biometric cameras with some kind of key, so you have some kind of pseudonym biometrics. This could be a solution.
But I can still extract it from it. If I know the encrypted key, it's in the database, I can still extract and have the real source of my eye scan or thumb scan or whatever I use. Even if I just change companies, I go to company A to B, I use the same password in A and in B.
Yeah, that's a problem. But you see, you have to see what application you want to do. That's really a problem. I think they also have problem with that in their whole passport campaign, where you can disclose attributes using verify.
Yes, this is different. You have dynamic and static biometric. And by the dynamic, you have two types. One you can change, the handwritten, and the other where you go, and in the young mechanical system, easy, and when you go is also typical for you, but you can change it. And the retina, the iris, the fingerprint, you can change the face. It's dangerous, of course, but for a lot of things, when you say, okay, only to 10 euros, so I need my fingerprint, or maybe 50 euros, okay, so it's okay, but not more.
But the error that way is much bigger than having to apply data. Do you agree on that? I go right name.
Yes.
Different types of high.
Yes, I show you later.
I have a question regarding the dynamic biometric systems, like the dynamics of the handwriting or of your art of walking. Usually it depends on how you feel this day. If I look on my personal signatures from letters years ago, it changed dramatically over the years. I don't see it from yesterday to tomorrow, but next month maybe I got a bad elbow or or if it's voice recognition, maybe I catch a cold or had some operation on Stillwelle. I see to allow me to access my system, there has to be a certain rate of false positives, and this is also a weak point.
This is exactly the reason why banks haven't introduced biometrics to the casual banking yet, because they saw that first about 5% or so of people don't have attributes which are enough to be enrolled, so they can't be enrolled at all. And then there are people, I mean, if you work in the garden, if you work hard on the weekend, then your visitors are not enrolled. So they always would have to have a fallback method, which could be hidden, for example, and it wouldn't be, it's not economical to introduce biometrics if you anyway to stick to things because you have to have a fallback method. This is exactly the reason why it hasn't been introduced to the economic. Now, it's completely right. They have a problem with this. I don't know how they want to solve this.
No, it's okay. We make it so we take the 5 or 10% from the last signature, we put in the database and 5 or I don't know, I don't make software, but the philosophy is, and then take 5% out. And so each day you change. So we change also with you. After 10 years, we know this problem. After 2 years, you stay there and get no money. Because the automat says you are not Peter Schmidt. This is possible. And for the author is, this is nice like this. You can put in this time also a physics. So when you have cut your finger, so you can sign, of course. You can put in the fingerprint of the other car computer can after 3 days you have another face. So the camera don't recognize you. So you need each time you need another system for root pin fallback pin. So I relate you can make it in the same place you write, you can also put in the pin.
Okay, that's the system right now.
Question to the inventor of Hazy. What do you think about biometric identification? You as the inventor.
Yes, okay. I can say you in English. Maybe I say German. Yes, I built up the 3 biometric Axiomen, also die 3 Waltus-Biometrie-Axiomen. Aber ich sage dir jetzt, die erste ist, die Biometrie wird die Welt nicht verbessern. Da gibt es gar keine Diskussion darüber. Da können ja alle so viel erzählen, wie sie wollen. Die Biometrie wird die Welt nicht verbessern. Das zweite Axiom ist, es gibt kein allein selig machendes biometrisches Merkmal. Ausdrucksscheiß, das ist das Beste, das ist das Beste, das ist das Beste, gibt es überhaupt nicht. Ja? Aber, und das ist das dritte Axiom, es gibt würdevolle und intelligente Kombinationen. Yes, one multimodal combination is the typing dynamic for a pin and the signature.
You're very convinced that works.
Yes, it works. Another one is, okay, you say it's a DNS test, but you need, what we make with these people who are not so intelligent like you, and like I, maybe. No, they have no computer at home, they have nothing. And also, how they have to sign the paper on Hazy or the signature, excuse me, the signature you can sign a paper and electronic document in the same time. So I call Tante Emma, Uncle Peter, yes, you know, he sees his contract, for example, and I read it, and yes, and say I give it on Hazy, and I sign in the same time, paper and electronic document. And the pressure of the pen in the paper is identical with the pressure in the database. So nobody can fake this, because you can make a new one, it's not the old signature.
And I show you again. you have to make tests here, and it's a second part of the.
Yeah, I'm wondering about facial scans. The system you're talking about are those not very cheap systems? Because I can hardly believe the systems like memory facial system scans have been put out. Has been
Excuse me, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, the systems you're talking about are those the really cheap systems? Because I can hardly imagine systems like Mandrake who have such an easy way to evade.
Yeah, we have mainly tested cheap systems. I told you reason for that before, but we have also had the opportunity to test some expensive systems, and it's basically the same thing. Let me say one word. I think biometrics are not bad, but they're far from being mature, and this wouldn't be a problem if those crazy politicians wouldn't try to push it into passports and visas up to now, because this technology is not mature up to now. We shouldn't really use it at large. Alright, now we come to the part where we play on the devices, and we will have a short real notification, then